darauf warten, dass irgendein Idiot es aufsagt.
This is not a run-of-the-mill school. Instances like teachers jumping off the building are not unheard of, and those who come here to instruct often can't endure beyond 3 days. Consequently, the school is perpetually recruiting new teachers to fill the gaps. The new substitute teacher, Elizabeth, was naive, hoping to hit it off with the students right away. When she tried to write her name with chalk, her hands got sticky with some gooey substance. She went to the nearby tap to wash it off, but the faucet was broken and sprayed her, soaking her completely. Then, she grabbed a towel to wipe her face, only to smear it with black grease, leaving a burning sensation. Ah, help me! Resigned, Elizabeth decided to leave and reached for the door, only to touch a handful of excrement. Little did the malevolent students know that the person about to bring a lifelong shadow over them had just been released from prison. Zeki, a notorious thug and scourge of society, he had been imprisoned for robbing a bank, serving 13 months with good behavior for an early release. All he needed to do was retrieve the hidden stash of cash to reach the pinnacle of his life. But upon his release, Zeki learned from his seductive female accomplice that the money was stashed away at a construction site. Zeki looked up at the high-rise building of the school before him. Ah, where's the construction site? It's been completed. I didn't expect it to be finished so quickly. It sprung up out of the ground. This was the infamous demonic school. How am I supposed to dig it out? Normally, the school wouldn't allow a social drifter like Zeki to enter and dig for treasure. He decided on a more conventional approach, to apply for a job as a boiler operator. On the first day of the interview, Zeki collided with a row of bicycles at the entrance. Hey, why are you so reckless? Shut up. Unexpectedly, there were quite a few people waiting in the interview hall. Sister, how desperate are you to apply for a job as a boiler operator? The sister didn't want to engage. Actually, this was an interview for substitute teachers. The boiler operator interviews were in the backyard. Zeki didn't know, and it didn't really matter to him. As long as he could get into the school, that was fine. But facing these poised competitors, Zeki would surely lose. So he secretly set off a gunfire alarm, sending the entire school into a frenzy with no one in sight. When the word reached the interviewing principal, "Where is everyone?" Zeki thus became the only candidate. The principal asked about his educational background. Dropped out in elementary. Very good. We need talents like you. Can you take a beating? Let's put it this way. I've served the bosses in prison. Zeki could start teaching tomorrow, but he needed to bring a teaching license. Where am I supposed to get that? Zeke's demeanor was indeed a fit for this place. As he was leaving, a student blocked his path, preventing him from exiting. Seeing some students smoking at school, Elizabeth, the newcomer, was stunned. Elizabeth's presence gave Zeki a glimmer of hope for obtaining a teaching license. He visited Elizabeth's home in the evening under the pretext of exchanging learning experiences and had a drink, but he slipped a large dose of a sedative into Elizabeth's drink. He found the teaching certificate in her room and started printing it out. Before he could finish, Elizabeth's roommate Popo came back. Zeki didn't have time to escape. He took off his clothes and pretended to have rolled around in the sheets with Elizabeth after a wild night, then sneaked away. But when Elizabeth woke up, she realized something was off. Someone had printed her teaching license. Without a doubt, it was Zeki. Using this as leverage, Elizabeth arranged for Zeki to take on the nearly fatal task of teaching the 10th grade class. Fine, as long as I can dig for treasure at night. On the second day of class, Zeki wanted to take attendance, and he was told the roster was in the cabinet. As he opened the cabinet and was about to grab it, he had just sat down when his butt stuck to the bench. It took a great effort to peel off. I'm done. This is too much bullying. Back in the car and ready to set off. Really haven't seen the gangsters. Ha! The next day, Zeki stood upstairs with a semi-automatic rifle. He targeted anyone who didn't come up to class. This time the students behaved. Zeki said they couldn't even be proper delinquents. He made them study on their own and wait for the class to end. In the middle of class, Elizabeth came in, asking if he didn't care that a student was crying. At night, Zeki was chased out by the gang boss he had sought refuge with. Homeless, he could only turn to Elizabeth's place for shelter. She agreed, but on the condition that Zeki must promise to properly guide the students onto the right path. That very day, Zeki beat up a student who had caused trouble during swimming class. Elizabeth accused him of not properly guiding the students, but what else could be done when these students lacked life goals? When they grew up, they'd rather sell contraband, work in special services, or live on welfare than lead a decent life. At night, while digging underground, Zeki accidentally discovered a time capsule, which turned out to have been placed there by a young Elizabeth. Young Elizabeth loved the world and wished to receive a letter offering friendship, or perhaps one of 3 other options. This awakened Zeke's childhood memories. He too was once a bright, sunny boy, but when money went missing in class, the teacher, a scoundrel, accused the poorest, Zeki, driving him step by step to a point of no return. Should he let his students continue down that path? It was time for a passionate transformation. You want to sell contraband? Zeki arranged an outdoor lesson. He took them to visit the residence of a contraband dealer. It was a place filled with smoke and flying cockroaches. This was the most notorious drug dealer in the city, occupying a large part of the German drug market. Now he couldn't get out of bed each day without injecting some kind of stimulant. Later, they visited a retired woman who had provided sexual services. She was sick, and in her later years, she could only smoke in her room. Now, no one talks about selling contraband anymore. Upon leaving, Zeki bought hamburgers for the students, but the money he used was stolen from Elizabeth. He encouraged the once best performing student in the class to continue studying hard for a promising future. Otherwise, like the little hooligans downstairs, they could only rob the money of good students passing by to barely get by. Zeki encouraged a student to help the good students, suggesting that becoming a good student starts with breaking out of the current circle and associating with good students. He also encouraged a child with a talent for drama to participate in plays. Without a suitable script, they wrote their own and produced an adult version of Romeo and Juliet overnight. Following these events, Zeke's students began to become more cheerful, love learning, and be full of curiosity. Zeki and Elizabeth's relationship improved as well. However, Zeki did not give up his nightly plan to search for treasure underground, and he was getting closer and closer to his goal. When the list of the most popular teachers for the semester was announced, Zeki topped the list among male teachers, while Elizabeth's friend was the most popular female teacher. Elizabeth was upset. She couldn't understand why, despite her hard work, she wasn't as popular as Zeki, whom she considered inferior. Elizabeth's position was at risk as the school leadership was to observe her teaching class 10, a notoriously difficult class. To help Elizabeth, Zeki joined her class for an outdoor lesson, which involved graffiti at a train station and a chase with the police, creating a strong bond of criminal camaraderie between students and teachers. The next day, Elizabeth and the students connected well, and the class cooperated enthusiastically when the school leadership observed. Showing their solidarity, Zeki finally broke through the last wall and found the hidden money. Overwhelmed by joy, he had planned to leave the school and squander his wealth, but now he was reluctant to leave the kids and Elizabeth. He decided to continue teaching and, with the students, won a silver prize in a German youth competition with their production of Romeo and Juliet. Zeke's achievements during his internship were recognized by the school, and he was officially hired. Elizabeth, however, was at risk of being fired, especially after a student kicked a hole in the gymnasium revealing Zeke's treasure hunting. Elizabeth crawled in and caught Zeki filling the hole. Learning that the man she admired had been a robber in jail a year before and had only become a teacher to dig for treasure, Elizabeth felt betrayed, believing Zeke's closeness to her was only for the treasure, not for love. The next day, Zeki disappeared from the school. As for the hole in the gym, the students all claimed they did it themselves. Taking the blame to protect Zeki, they even insisted that Elizabeth must find Zeki. He deceived my feelings and gambled with your futures, yet you still think well of him? At least he understands us, and besides, he's cool. Today happens to be the mock exam day, and everyone brings out a photo of something they've longed for, placed on their desks. This is the dream motivation method. It can motivate students to study hard and do well on the test. The students mentioned that Zeki has one too. In his desk, Elizabeth opens the desk to find a photo of herself as a child. She is his dream. At that moment, Zeke's attractive female accomplice arrives, giving Elizabeth the money Zeki had dug up along with a letter. Zeki is preparing to leave the school, offering his permanent position to Elizabeth. But now, Zeki is in the middle of a robbery. Suddenly, he sees the train they had graffitied that night and feels a surge of social responsibility. Why not just be a teacher? He decides to quit the life of crime. After getting off, he even encourages his accomplice to find a job. Zeki returns and makes a heartfelt confession to Elizabeth, presenting her with a letter containing 3 options, akin to a childhood wish. Elizabeth happily accepts, and the two of them finally get together. As they head to the school, they are caught by the principal. The principal, under no circumstances, wants Zeki to leave the school. The recent mock exam results are out, and the class Zeki taught has made remarkable progress. But I didn't even graduate from elementary school. No matter, the principal says, waving his hand grandly, stamping some documents. Today, Zeki graduates from this school as a student and enters directly into a working position. Can that even work? Anyway, all is well, and with that, the movie ends.